may I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Cornell, Trustee Listner, Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Mulvaney.
Here.
Trustee Thomas.
Here.
Trustee Vree.
Here.
Okay, our first matter of business is consideration. There we are. Our first matter of business is consideration of adopting the minutes of the June 21st, 2018 Committee of the Whole and Village Board regular meeting. Are there any questions or changes to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion to adopt them?
I so moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Trustee Listner. Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Mulvaney.
Yes.
Trustee Thomas.
Yes.
Trustee Vree.
Yes.
Is there anyone who would like to address the board on a matter not on the agenda tonight?
I'm not on the agenda, but the matter is on the
You're here about...
Which matter are you referring?
We sign up on lines of
Sorry, I didn't hear which?
No public comment.
Now would be the time.
This would be the appropriate time. I would request that you speak from the podium, identify yourself
Sure will.
as to your name and address, and normally our rules permit you to speak for 3
3
minutes.
minutes. Okay, I will do that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. My name is Jane Atlas. If I look familiar to you, it might be because I taught you or your children during my 34 years as a New Trier English teacher. Or perhaps you know me because you or your spouse has participated in one of the many book groups I've led at the Glencoe Library. Or you've run into me buying groceries at DJ's, or we've been in line together buying coffee at Starbucks. My face may look familiar because I've lived for 43 years at the same address, 235 Sylvan Road. It was to this home I brought home my children back from the hospital, and in the decades since, where I've raised my 2 girls following their education through South, West, Central schools, and on to New Trier, where they were likely not thrilled that their mom was a visible, established presence there. Glencoe is home to me. I have enjoyed living in my small home in this intimate community surrounded by good people. Without fail, for 43 years, I have paid my taxes and justified the cost because of the many services they provide. I have never had a cause to complain until now. On your agenda tonight, under item G, you are scheduled to discuss and consider approving a resolution authorizing an amendment to the engineering services agreement with Baxter and Woodman for the 2018 Storm Sewer Outfall Improvement Project. That's a title I might have amended if I were, as an English teacher, looking at it. Your staff is prepared to ask you tonight for more money in the design stages of the project. You will likely look closely at the numbers, and they will make a case for why additional spending is deemed necessary. I want each of you tonight, and you in particular, Mr. Levin, as Village Board President, to fully understand the human impact of what this project entails, and to share with you how the village's failure to act in a timely manner has caused significant harm to me and my family. I elected you to protect me. The village staff has done nothing but ignore my pleas for help in repairing the damage done to my property as a result of the failed storm sewer under the Frank Lloyd Wright Bridge. I'd like to remind you that it was I who served as the village cheerleader to gather the support of my neighbors in the Ravine Bluffs Association to restore and repair the Frank Lloyd Wright Bridge in the 1980s. Without my living on the property adjacent to the bridge and actively helping the village in its efforts to restore the bridge, Glencoe might not be able today to pride itself on the Frank Lloyd Wright legacy. That bridge has gone from being a source of great joy in my life to a source of tremendous upset. While I trusted that the village would protect me by designing and implementing sound infrastructure, I was very wrong. As your staff has likely briefed you, the storm sewer drain on Sylvan Road has busted open. By installing an additional pipe carrying stormwater from the surrounding area that emits torrents of rushing water, the result of these two engineering failures by the Village of Glencoe has resulted in my property being severely damaged. David Mao was not only aware of the damage that was being caused, but he is quoted in the press on September 1st, 2017, as saying, quote, "There is some erosion on one of the banks, which has been a progressive thing on the private property to the north of the Wright Bridge, located on Sylvan Road. It is important to continue to reach out to owners of these properties to educate and raise awareness about how they can best monitor and manage ravine properties," end quote. In the 43 years I have lived here, I have never once been contacted by anyone from the Glencoe Village staff to tell me you have been monitoring progressive erosion on my property. Despite Mr. Mao claiming that it is important to reach out to educate the owners of the private property about how we manage ravine erosion, no one has said anything, sent anything, or alerted me or my family that we were in danger, and we are in danger. The torrential force of the water from the drains has so severely caused the ravine slopes on my property to degrade that it has now exposed the foundation of my home, and engineers have told me that without immediate action, my house is in danger. These photos, which Maggie's given to you, my daughter, show the extent of the damage. I need your help. I live on a retired teacher's pension. I cannot begin to take on the costs associated with stabilizing my house and repairing the ravine slope. Your staff has asked me to allow use of my driveway to build a ramp to repair the engineering failure near the bridge. In return, and in good faith, I have said that I would help with the project, but that I need financial help to stabilize my property. I have proposed that the village acquire my property, allowing your staff complete access to do their job. I'm well aware that part of the reason that the village needs to move forward in addressing this project has nothing to do with my safety. There's a power line on my property that is sinking because of the eroding ravine. The live power lines have dipped dangerously into the street, causing a liability for the village, not to mention for me and my family's safety. I come to you tonight to ask for your help. The situation is such that I cannot afford to do nothing, and I cannot afford the cost of the repair. As a longtime resident and as a teacher, I have dedicated my life to helping the people of Glencoe. Now, I need your help. The staff has turned its back on me. I'm asking you, as village board members, not to do the same. Please help me.
Thank you. We will certainly take all of that into consideration as we move forward. All right.
Mr. President, I should say that I have been in close contact with Mrs. Etlis's attorney, and I could report to the board in the appropriate time some of the alternatives that may be available to the board.
Thank you, Steve.
Can I ask you a question? We have G on the consent agenda. Is there anything that we would be doing by approving that as part of the consent agenda that would include consideration of these alternatives and so forth?
No, it won't affect, the item on the consent agenda is different and is separate from
That was my understanding.
the consideration of this.
I wanted to be clear on the record that that's true.
Correct. All right. At this point, it is appropriate to move to committee reports. There was no committee of the whole meeting this evening, so there's nothing to report on that.
Sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
So, at the opening remarks, I think you mentioned you were asking us not to approve some clear that the approval process we're going through is to make some repairs on the existing system. But that, approving that doesn't exclude or preclude anything additional.
They're not linked. They're two
No,
separate
that's-
issues.
That was the gist of my,
I just want to make sure you understood that.
All right. Trustee Vree, do you have a report of the Finance Committee meeting?
Yes. So we met tonight to go over the village finances for the month of June. And so through the first, the first 33% of the year, the general fund is trending ahead of plan, mostly due to property taxes and permits. Both are quite a bit above what we expected, with property taxes coming in about $250,000 ahead, and then permits coming in about $50,000 ahead. So construction activity has been very good, and there was a 2% increase to the property tax levy that we passed last year. So those are some of the reasons for those increases. Expenditures are coming in as planned, or actually they're coming in a little bit better than planned, due to some personnel costs being a little below expected, what we expected at the beginning of the year. And then we also discussed the CIP. It's been somewhat of a quieter year relative to last year, and so we're in the midst of the second quarter, nothing too big coming this quarter, this month. And then finally, we did our first discussion about our contribution to the police pension fund, and we are just beginning. We got the actuarial report about what we would need to contribute to the pension fund, and then we wait for the state's mandated amount, and then we'll go back to discussing what's an appropriate amount for the village to contribute. And that was the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Trustee Miller, was there a Plan Commission meeting?
There was not. We do expect that there will be one in August.
Thank you. Trustee Thomas, could you tell us about the Golf Advisory Committee meeting?
we did meet Monday night. The report I'm going to give will not come as a surprise to anyone because it's like a broken record. The weather has not been good for golf. To give an example, in June, there were 11.1 inches of rain against the average of 3.67 for the month of June, which, needless to say, is a large difference. The result was there were 2 days where there was zero revenue because the course could not be used at all, and there were 11 days where power carts could not be used. And the way it works is there are some significant numbers of people who will not play unless they can use the power cart. They're not capable of or would not desire to walk the course. So all these had negative effects on revenue. The other problem is that it has negative effects on course conditions too. If you get excessive rain, you get water lying in some low-lying areas, and then you get 3 days of 95-degree weather or something, it essentially kills the roots in some of these areas. So the result is that there are some areas of the fairways which are sort of brown. The good news is it doesn't really affect the playability of the course. And if you've been watching the British Open, it's not that brown. But it's nonetheless disconcerting for those of us who really love the course. The other good news is, notwithstanding this, on a yearly basis, we are still better than budget in terms of revenues exceeding expenses. Not by a huge amount, but we are. Just a review of a few other events that have been going on. We had a senior scramble with over 40 seniors participating. There's the half-day junior camp. We had our first one, and we had the maximum number of children attending that. And we had our fourth annual 9-hole par 3 shootout, which raised money for Maryville Academy. And that's my report.
Thank you. Trustee Mulvaney, is there anything new on the Sustainability Task Force?
Well, sure, there is. We did meet, and we have a number of items to discuss. As you know, we're working through our initiatives. starting with recreation. So, we read a monthly article in the Anchor, and this month it'll be about recreation. Recreation, of course, recreate, and the importance of recreating through active lifestyles, contributing to the sustainability of humanity. And we also are discussing our community rating systems. We'll be coming forth in a month or so to talk about whether or not we want to have certification for our sustainability initiatives. We were talking about the active transportation plan. This will be coming forth in final report in September. We also have a ravine alliance, as Mrs. Atlas spoke very, very eloquently and passionately. I think the ravines are an important aspect of our community. They're important for our ecology. They're important to the homes that live on the ravines, and they're important to actually all the homes that drain into the ravines. As we've been talking in our ravine group, that it's everybody who contributes that has a stake in these systems. And so, as mentioned, this volume of water is coming not just from the homes immediate, and we should all understand that. This water is not coming from the homes on the ravine. They're coming from the homes upstream of the ravine, right? So if we block 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 blocks away from the ravine, your stormwater is passing through that system. So it's a much larger community that needs to be engaged in simply ravine owners. And so there was a ravine alliance that we're forming. This is a pretty innovative group, and they and we are helping them think through how to better manage the ravine systems. So anyways, we had an event, one of the residents hosted ravine owners. In this case, they were property owners who were on ravines, to talk about how to better manage the slopes. So that's what we've done last month, this past month. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, we're working towards redesigning our recycling cans in the downtown area, coming up with a different design for recycling. This is one more thing, check notes. Social media accounts, so we are also actively trying to figure out how to better some social media, and some of you may have seen the Green Bay Trail has got recently awarded a grant. Part of that grant is for them to advertise through social media. So there are lessons that we can learn from our other groups working towards sustainability, and so we hope to be collaborating with them on that. Going forward, we are still continuing to be the most sustainable community and most desired community in the universe, and we intend to get there. So when we come to talk to you about ratings, they won't have one yet for the universe, but we may set a standard to strive.
Excellent.
Can I ask one?
Thank you.
The active transportation plan, is the Sustainability Commission the one that's going to present it to all of us, or how is that?
Oh yeah, good question. So the active transportation plan was initiated by the Sustainability Task Force, and many of our members participate on the task force, or some, I forget exactly which ones, but I think 3, and led by staff. But who presents it, I don't know. We hired we hired somebody to help us with the plan, and many of you hopefully have seen the community outreach and the engagement and participated. You all, I know all of you didn't submit the online information where you could put in your thoughts and ideas.
I did it.
Good, yeah. And so anyways, but who presents it finally, I'm not sure. That could be Adam.
I anticipate it's Active Transportation Alliance staff along with village staff
Yeah.
that'll be presenting
Sorry,
it.
that's a long way to get into somebody. I'm not sure who will present.
But it will be presented.
It will be presented, and I may want to have a hand in the presentation.
Thank you. Trustee Listener, can you tell us what is new with the Sesquicentennial Planning Committee?
Well, we are continuing to meet every other week, plus I know there are members who are working on this much more frequently than that. As you can see by the board out in lime and green, we are soliciting ideas from the community for the legacy gift. And village staff has been tallying up all the different suggestions that have been coming in that way. People who would like to provide their suggestions online can also do that at the Sesquicentennial website. We're also going to be at the French Market on Saturday this week, handing out balloons to children, and just talking up the Sesquicentennial celebration to members of the community who come by. So we will definitely be there. On Monday evening, we're hosting a meeting for representatives of various community organizations in Glencoe who have been involved in the planning of the Sesquicentennial celebrations, and we're trying to get closer to finalizing the different activities that they will all be sponsoring during the course of the year. We're probably thinking that we will be having some sort of activity at least once a month during the course of 2019.
Sounds very exciting. Thank you. Now it's time for the village manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're going to start this evening, and I'd like to welcome our External Affairs Manager from Commonwealth Edison, Carlo Cavallero. He's going to be presenting his ComEd's annual report relative to the village. The report was included in tonight's agenda packet. Carlo is going to walk through it a bit with the board, touching on several data points, and is available for questions, of course. I'll turn it over to you, Carlo.
Exactly. I think we have prepared some slides.
I'd be happy to get the slides for you.
Just do it, yeah, there was only 4 of them. So the most important thing is, I think we were here last year explaining how we track, for the most part, frequency and duration. We actually had I know last year was the first time we'd been here in a while. So we had some pretty stellar years, talking about 15 and 16, because we go through the years in a review. 17 for frequency was a little bit of an uptick, more or less normalized compared to the system with 0.87. Your all-in number for duration was 180 minutes. But the interesting thing is your non-storm number was significantly higher. So when we were looking at this, it was just troubling, because normally you would expect the storm number to be significantly higher. What we actually had is we had a significant number of trees. About 70% of the driver for the duration number of non-storm was from fallen limbs and actually trunks. So full trees and limbs coming down outside what we classify as a storm window. Now, admittedly, should it be classified in a storm? We can make the argument, but we made it, the way they track these outages, it was done long ago. But if the trees are weakened and whatnot, that's really what we believe the cause would be. But the necessity is the cause was the trees. And then the other category worth mentioning, I know we always talk about underground versus overhead, was the big driver was underground cable faults, and that's primarily due to the time it takes to repair those. But it was really surprising about the tree impact. Go to the next slide. It was a pretty good year overall. Now I remember last year when I was here, we had kind of talked about how EMA had ended, the Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act, and how FEJA was going in. So the big question was, will you continue to invest? So what this slide gives you is a complete summary of everything that's been done from 2012 through 2017. And I've got some other bullet points in the next page. But you can see in the 2018 plan, the continued focus and investment continues, and it's going to continue for the foreseeable future. You go to the next slide. I got a summary of the EMA stuff. I wanted to give you the actual numbers. So the Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act was $2.6 billion in direct investment from the rate base into the system. $1 billion that brought us all the smart meters, which we've been done in Glencoe for about 2 years. We're literally about 99% finished, because we're at the far western edge and southern edge, southwest edge of our territory. We'll be finished by the end of this year, so everyone will have the smart meter. It's $4 million in total. The other $1.6 billion was invested in grid modernization. So even 11 complete smart substations installed, 5,700 smart switches, 31,000 manholes inspected, 25,000 poles, replaced and 4,900 miles of underground cable replaced. There's thousands of miles of cable that was converted from overhead to underground. I mean, there's a litany I could go on for 2 decks of just exactly the extent of the work. The key metrics we were measuring is in our annual report, kind of our performance for last year was overall, just under EMA, 46% improvement in both safety and Katie overall. From the beginning of EMA, which is 2012, through the end of 2017. I gave you guys these chips today because ComEd's constant performance. So what you see is this is another acronym we have is CME. So that's customers experiencing multiple interruptions. These CMEs have become, this was a trick by our, kind of a gimmick from our reliability engineers who generally support us and they investigate all this stuff to raise awareness. So with ComEd, everyone says when you join ComEd after about the first 6 months, you drive around and all you're doing is looking at the lines. You're always looking at the equipment. You're always kind of monitoring. So we're, see something, say something. Every employee operates under that. We have our own app that we use called Udentify for the utilities to use. So when we see something, we can tag it, photo it, and it geocodes it, sends it out. There's a team that watch that, create work orders. They review it, see what work is necessary, or at least verify that there's already a work order existing. CME is the latest one that we see, and this is part of the huddles in the morning when the guys leave the field, when the guys go out in the field, supervisors, everyone, to maintain their focus. So whenever they're working on a job, they can be replacing a pole over there, but to make sure if they see something or they identify something that could be an issue, that they raise it. So just an additional focus point. Yeah, so I just brought these a little kind of reminder for them. I think they're pretty legit, but yeah, there's no logo on them, of course. So, but it's just seen. And then for the last slide, I just kind of go over what the future holds. FEJA is kind of another summary. It was a great partnership between the environmental groups, Exelon, ComEd. We passed the legislation, and pieces come online every year. So this year, what you saw. So we were kicked off in full swing, the LED streetlight conversion project. You were actually included in part of the trial process, so you were done in 2017. So you've had your LED streetlights for a year. Those are the ComEd-owned lights. Then this year we saw an additional investment in a kickoff of energy efficiency. It started June 1st of 2017, fully under ComEd. So this is our first full year to have the program. So that brings a wealth of energy efficiency programs. The most unique one is focused on public sector. So schools, libraries, other governmental entities, municipalities. So working with staff you don't have that many facilities, but those that are there have facility assessments, see what else is done. Just like the residential and commercial and small business facility assessments that we recommend being done. Obviously financial assistance programs were completely revised and expanded. The solar projects and community solar being included as a subset in there is probably the biggest boom we've had. Illinois sits probably in leading edge, number 1 of renewable energy investment, grid modernization because of the passage of this legislation. We have the first RECs, retail energy credits. Yeah, exactly. So I know you know all about the RECs. So that lot, it's going to be the solar industry and the solar developers that have come in, whether it's community solar, rooftops, commercial grade, generation grade, has exploded so much that the Illinois Power Authority is going to have to run a lottery for how many applications they've put in. I forgot how many megawatts is in the first allocation, but they're oversold by 1,000%. So that's why they're going to do a lottery. There's going to be other not lotteries, but other issuances of these RECs to go, but the first one is probably the most heavily incentivized. The other unique thing that we have is the Bronzeville microgrid. So we constantly talk about innovation in the grid. So we talk about all the smart switches and the smart substations. And the same thing, Bronzeville's microgrid it's a unique partnership between the Department of Energy, IIT, the ComEd, and I think there's the hospital group that's down there. I'm spacing out on actually the hospital. So it brings in the hospital itself. So that you have distributed generation between all those entities using any number of renewable opportunities. So you'll have, some will be natural gas generators, you'll have battery backup, you'll have solar, you'll have wind. And what that does is basically if The lights go out, they just they have a microgrid switch, they turn off and they're off the grid, but they're still operating. The biggest one that was known is, I think it was Stanford's or Princeton's, when Hurricane Sandy hit. The entire East Coast was dark for that period of time, but the university was fully functioning because of they had fully 100% light. So I think those are the highlights for the future stuff. I think that's about it. Other than there's questions, so that's the highlights for the past 2 years. We continue to invest. See what you think.
Can I ask you a question? Do you have a theory, or has a theory been developed as to why there were more trees falling down that seemed not to be directly related to storms?
Well, I actually just think they fell out the window. So about 2 to 3 days after the storm clears, you get that blue sky day, right? And then we see the outage notices going off, and people are wondering, it's a perfectly clear day. Yeah, well, that tree was decimated by the windstorm that was 2 to 3 days ago, and it finally just gave up, or it was killed and finally fell over. So, they're outside the window. It's impossible to prove. It's pretty logical when you go investigate them and see them. But at the end of the day, we're not so much investigating at that point in time. It's, the crews are there. They're getting the stuff out of the way. They're getting the lines back up. And I don't think we've been penalized too much for it. I think the intensity of the storms that we've seen, and I think the point you talked about, the 37% improvement in storm performance. I mean, I've only been here 4 years, right? And I've never seen what everyone saw in 2011 and how the system would perform. So I've been quite spoiled in my tenure. And I like the fact that we keep hearing about how it's going to continue. So for all of us. I mean, we're all customers as well.
So I forgot to mention for the sustainability report, we have one particular volunteer who put a tremendous amount of effort into solar initiatives for Glencoe. And we've had a lot of phone calls and meetings to talk about what we can do. So if, let's say, we were to make an initiative to promote solar here in Glencoe, the grid and the meter system, tell me how this would respond, and if there's anything that we should consider as we think through a solarizing strategy.
So, for the most part, for us in the North Shore, I mean, I live in Glenview. I have a perfect rooftop. I face south. It's 3,000 square feet of home or whatever. So I face due south. It's taller than the homes that are to the south of me. So I looked at getting the analysis done. So it's really just the individual expenses you want to incur. Now they have 100% financing options. So they keep calling me to try and do it. But for here, though, it depends on the tree canopy. So for us in the grid, we can take.
I'm asking about the grid, so we can figure out where.
The grid's not an issue because if you're not going to put a generation level, because I don't know that there's that much space here. Actually, I know there's not that much green space here in Converge, which is a solar field. The grid has no, because you're limited to 2 megawatts for even community. So, and the first aspect of that is the engineering study that goes in, and then we make that determination. So if you're talking generally rooftop or even village hall or municipal buildings, that type of capacity is not an issue.
Not an issue from a permitting perspective, what you're saying from an infrastructure perspective, we're ready for that.
Sure. Yeah, it's our task to make it ready. I mean, could be a cost involved when you're dealing with the generation ones. I mean, we had one developer who was basically going to have to expand the substation because of the location they picked. So that's not exactly the most cost effective. But I think the benefit for everyone is, and for you, and I know for Glencoe and a lot of the North Shore, the community solar program that's been, I know the Go Green Illinois, I work with them frequently. So the community solar aspect is probably our best opportunity for all of us that live in this area, just like with condos and apartment dwellers, because we may not all have the same roof that I have, so it makes the more sense to buy those subscriptions and participate in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo.
Thanks, Carlo. Have a good night.
I have just a few more items I wanted to touch on this evening. I've asked Director of Public Safety, Carrie Lewandowski, to say just a few words tonight relative to Speed Awareness Day, which is next week, and how we have been had a bit more of an added focus on speeding in the community. We've got some new speed awareness signs that have gone up in 4 different locations. So I'll turn it over to Chief Lewandowski.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just want to talk about those two things briefly. First of all, I'm sure some of you have noticed we've got some radar speed display signs that we posted throughout town. We have 4 of those devices, 2 are on Dundee Road, 2 are on Green Bay Road. We're doing that to promote driver awareness of speed limits throughout Glencoe. We were able to get those signs based on a grant made possible by the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and Commonwealth Edison. And I think you'll be happy to hear that 3 out of the 4 signs are solar powered. So we're trying to be sustainable as well. These signs, the way we've designed them with Public Works assistance and installing them, we made them semi-portable. So throughout the year, we can move them periodically to target specific areas where we're having some speed issues. So that's it on the signs. Related to that, obviously, is I'd like to promote Illinois Speed Awareness Day. It's next Wednesday, July 25th. And on that day, our officers will be very proactive promoting speed awareness and safety throughout town, whether it's motorists, pedestrians, or bicyclists. We're all in this together. And not only on Speed Awareness Day, but every day, of course, our officers are encouraging our residents to do their part to prevent fatalities and serious injuries on the roadways by being aware of safe driving habits and obeying the speed limits at all times. That's my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Trustee Mulvaney had brought up the active transportation plan and the efforts that have been underway with that. We've been working closely with District 35 and the Park District, and I think have had some of the better public input sessions and public discussions that I've been part of in a long time with the focus group that's been focused on this. One of the things that has come out of those discussions is a bit of an increased awareness of some of the obstructions that have started to grow into our sidewalk network throughout the community, limiting access by pedestrians and in some cases by cyclists, enabling them to utilize those sidewalks safely and effectively. We have posted some additional information on the village's website relative to this. We do ask that if individuals have vegetation growing near their sidewalks, that they be conscious of the fact if that vegetation is overgrowing and overgrowing into the sidewalks. We do reach out to property owners that are not in compliance and work with them on getting that trimmed back. Sometimes when there is no action or response, the village will go in and then charge back the owner of the property for any and all expenses that are incurred. But we really do see this as a partnership opportunity, and I just wanted to make mention of the fact that it is something that sometimes is perhaps not front of mind. A lot of properties have sidewalks near them, but actually are those public sidewalks are at the rear of a property, where the property owner may not regularly send landscaping crews or their own selves back to clear some of that overgrowth. So it is just a worthwhile thing for a reminder that is a responsibility that we all have. So we will continue to have information on our website relative to some of the regulations that tie back to that.
Quick addition.
Yes.
If you could, remind people, do not mound your chips against your trees.
Do not mound your chips against your trees. That is a good point. Yes, that is a common error in a lot of landscapers who are mulching around trees. We do have information on the village's website relative to the appropriate way to mulch around trees, and hope people do take advantage of that information.
Well, I'm thinking they can do it on their own property, but in the right of way, don't we have more of a latitude to do something about that? Because that will ultimately cost us
Absolutely.
trees.
And we do, as those are encountered, we do reach out to those property owners or take action on our own to pull that back. I wanted to just make mention of the fact the village is partnering with New Trier Township, and we are serving as a drop-off site for their annual book drive effort. Now through Friday, August 3rd, we are encouraging residents to donate new or gently used children's books. Those you can drop those off downstairs in the main lobby of the Village Hall during regular business hours. The drive benefits Bernie's Book Bank. That is specifically serving at-risk youth throughout the Chicagoland area, so it's a nice opportunity for us to work with New Trier Township on that effort. I also just wanted to make mention of a few upcoming events. This Saturday is our annual event with the Park District, which is our Meet the Machines event. It's a great way for families to interact with our staff and to enjoy sitting in our large equipment and spending some time getting to know what it's like to sit behind the wheel of a big dump truck and some other equipment. So that will be this Saturday on Village Court. Glencoe Festival of Art takes place next Saturday and Sunday, the 28th and 29th. It's important to note that setup for that event begins Friday evening around 5 p.m. Please be aware that Park Avenue and Vernon Avenue will both be closed to all vehicular traffic that afternoon and then through the weekend. We also have a Coffee with the Board event coming up on Saturday, August 4th. President Levin and Trustee Miller will both be manning the booth on behalf of the village, but that also is an opportunity for folks to come out and meet trustees from the Library Board, Park District Board, and District 35's board. And last but not least, our final Movies on the Green takes place Friday, August 10th. It is Star Wars: The Last Jedi is our last movie of the year. So that has been successful again this year, and hope people can make it out in August. With that, that's my report this evening.
Thank you. Several things for the President's report. Wanted to announce that Trent Cornell will be resigning his position on the board effective August 31st. Because his family is moving out of town, so he will no longer be a resident. The next order of business is our consideration of a proclamation declaring July 20th, 2018, a Special Olympics Day in the village of Glencoe, and that our public safety supports the Special Olympics, and as you know, had a special event, and in our packet was our proclamation. Are there any questions on it, or may I have a motion to adopt the proclamation?
Second?
May I have, well, actually, on that, I can have a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. Our next order of business is Beth Dunn, who is here from the Chicago Botanic Gardens and the Forest Preserve of Cook County, as a representative here to talk to us about their projects and visions for the future,
Well,
which are
first-
always exciting.
Well, great. Well, it's great to be here. I was thinking as I was coming over, I celebrated my 10th anniversary at the Chicago Botanic Garden, and I was thinking about it. Larry, you got me right involved in serving on the working group for the sustainability group, and then moved on to the task force. So I feel like I've become quite a partner. And the garden feels
Absolutely.
very strongly about being your neighbor and working with you. We're serving on the Ravines Alliance group as well, and we're trying to, we got lots of ideas for the celebration for next year, and we just need to figure out what we want to do. But anyways, that's great. And I just was thinking, I also have a shirt tail relations to your former village president, Wyman. So anyway, so all that came to mind, but really I'm here tonight with Anthony Tyndall from the Forest Preserves, and we wanted to bring to your attention all the great work that the Forest Preserve is doing, and we like to consider, well, Chicago is best known for the lakefront skyline and river. It has another important feature, the nearly 70,000 acres that make up the Forest Preserves of Cook County. And within those woodlands, prairies, wetlands, marshes, and savannas, the Forest Preserve contains among the highest concentration of rare, threatened, and endangered plants in the state. The Chicago Botanic Garden is 385 acres within the Forest Preserves, and we benefit greatly from being part of one of the country's great urban greenways. Created jointly by the Forest Preserves and the Chicago Horticultural Society, the garden receives an annual operating support from the Forest Preserves and partners with it on a variety of issues, including conservation, restoration, horticulture, and education. Tonight, we're here as your neighbors and your partners, and as we were getting started, staff we made multiple connections of things that we need to work on together, including the golf course, which is great. And we wanted to share more with you about the Forest Preserve's Next Century Conservation Plan, and that's what Anthony will present tonight.
So good evening, President Levine, trustees, staff, and residents. I'm Anthony Tindall. I'm the policy manager for the Cook County Forest Preserves. And for the past 5 years, I've been building forest preserve policies and helping to implement our strategic plan called the Next Century Conservation Plan. Before I talk about the plan, I just wanted to give you all a reminder about what the Forest Preserves is. So we have prepared a short presentation for you. So, our mission is to acquire, restore, and manage lands for the purpose of protecting and preserving public open space. We have nearly 70,000 acres of land all throughout Cook County, and we are home to some amazing biodiversity in woodlands, savannas, wetlands, prairies. We have over 40 managed lakes and ponds. We are home to over 100 endangered species. Some beautiful ecosystem services. We provide over almost $500 million worth of ecosystem values in clean air, clean water, stormwater, management, retention, and other avenues that we're trying to increase. We are doing a lot of habitat restoration. What that means is we're trying to remove all the buckthorn and other invasive species and make sure that all of our lands are the highest quality of ecological health. We depend heavily on stewards to help us manage the upkeep of our lands. We depend a lot on volunteers, some of which are in Glencoe. And we have tons of outdoor recreation opportunities, both in water, on our lands. We have picnic groves, we have permitted activities, rentals, 300 miles of paved and unpaved trails. We've got 5 brand new camping locations throughout Cook County. We've got 6 nature education centers, hundreds of free events for residents and visitors throughout the year. We've got hundreds of special activities that we do with community groups of a variety of different kinds. We do education and outreach. Our 2 gyms are the Brookfield Zoo, and our queen gym is the Chicago Botanical Gardens that we absolutely adore and appreciate. So a couple of years we celebrated our 100-year anniversary, and to cap that off, we decided to create a next century conservation plan. So what are we going to be doing for the next 100 years? So this plan is divided into 4 different sections. We have a leadership section, an economic section, a people section, and then a nature section. So the nature section is one of the most important. We're going to restore 30,000 acres of our land to the highest quality of ecological health. We're going to try to acquire 20,000 additional acres of open space that we've identified in Cook County. And we're going to expand our civilian conservation corps program, basically getting young people involved in nature so that there is a next generation of conservation leaders. One of the asks that the Forest Preserves has for the village of Glencoe is to participate. So experience nature at your local preserve or the Chicago Botanical Garden, attend some of our events, volunteer with Forest Preserves Online. And we actually have an event coming up next Wednesday that we would love to invite you to. So there is a meeting regarding the Skokie Lagoons Boathouse. And so our planning department wanted to invite you to this meeting to discuss the future plans for the boathouse at the Skokie Lagoons. It's next Wednesday at 10 o'clock at the Chicago Botanical Garden. So we just wanted to take a little bit of time just to build the relationship with you, answer any questions that you might have, and just start the relationship. So, thank you.
Thank you, Anthony and Beth. Any questions for Anthony or Beth on this excellent presentation?
I have a question about comment. We volunteer at the Skokie Lagoons, and the lagoons, I think, are an underrated asset for Glencoe. Tremendous recreation opportunities there, and you may or may not notice the buckthorn clearing makes a dramatic difference in slow process because it's one day a month where the volunteers go and make progress. But if you can just pay attention there at the corner of Tower and
Forest Way.
That's where we sort of used to congregate. But we've cleared that area of Buckthorn. It is dramatically different than areas that are not. It's a good way to sort of notice what is in the town.
Thank you for that. We are trying to beef up our volunteer resource center, trying to locate new volunteers and volunteer stewards to help us with this initiative throughout Cook County, but especially our Skokie lagoons. We should do more, and we're trying to.
You do great things, and we're pleased to work with you, and especially with our botanic gardens. We love them, and our golf course that is our joint venture is an Audubon golf course and works to be right in line with your plans for the future. And so we thank you for coming here and sharing this with us, and we look forward to helping you work on this for the next century.
Thank you so much. We left program guides for you and the visitors right out here. It's hundreds of different activities this summer. Another brochure will be coming out in the fall. We also have maps to show you all of the different assets that we have that are free and open to the public. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I also want to say, I think the Forest Preserve over the last, 5 years or so has just done a fabulous job, not only of enhancing the Forest Preserve, but I think in community awareness, making people more aware of what's going on with it. And I'm sure that will, continue to bear fruit. So, thank you. It is a wonderful, wonderful asset.
All right. This time I wanted to congratulate a very important part of our team, Steve Elrod, on having become the president of the Chicago Bar Association. And you can remind me what are the 3 C's that are the basis of your mission, among other things?
Well, civics, civility, and collegiality.
And if he can just get across that to the entire United States, we are going to be much better off.
Got your work cut out for you.
Start with Chicago.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much, President Levin. I appreciate that.
Our next village board meeting is August 16th. I wanted to mention that. Before we get to the consent agenda, I wanted again to say that we take very seriously the presentation that you made this evening about Sylvan Lane, and we will be taking that up on its own merits and separately. So, and it's different from the item on the consent agenda. Is there any questions or things on the consent agenda, or may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second?
May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Listner?
Yes.
Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Trustee Mulvaney?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Vree?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other items that any board member wants to discuss before we move to the motion for a closed session?
I have a quick comment.
Yep.
This is a silly story, but my wife went to have a car repaired at one of these places along
Skokie Boulevard?
Skokie Boulevard, thank you. Words on tonight. And she happened to get a real fearful about how difficult it's been to work with Glencoe on an expansion that they were doing. It has to do something with some wetland areas near that, I guess the west side of their lot. And of course, they had no idea that wasn't the board or anything, but she came home and was like, holy smokes. She got a real this guy really chewed out Glencoe. So I just want to know or make sure that there isn't something we dropped the ball on. They say that they've been delayed their opening. They've had a terrible time.
Trustee Mulvaney, can you explain who this was that was making this complaint? Or we can talk about it offline if you prefer, but I'm not familiar with what you might be referring to.
Well, I mean, I don't know the details, but this is secondhand for Lisa. But whoever, some manager at the shop that she apparently hanging out
Of
with.
what group? Manager of what group?
shop?
I will give you, I won't tell you
Okay.
about this, I don't even know where exactly
Okay.
it goes, but it's apparently the dealer is right on our border, and they have moved into our border. An expansion took them over the property line and into the. Are you familiar, Steve?
Well, yes, yes.
Yeah, but I also heard some of this litany a while ago, and I think part of the problem, which I think Steve obviously knows more than I do, is a cross-jurisdictional
Right.
problem, and that's part of the problem.
Might be worth just following up to make sure we are doing what we're supposed to.
If it's what I'm thinking of, I don't think it's us, but we will follow up
Well,
on
that's not assumed.
it. Right, but we will find out. Okay, at this moment, may I have a motion to convene into closed session for the purpose of discussing pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Section 2C3, consideration of selection of a person to fill a public office, Section 2C11, probable or imminent litigation against or by the village, and Section 2C5, consideration of the purchase or lease of property.
I assume.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Mulvaney.
Yes.
Trustee Thomas.
Yes.
Trustee Vree.
Yes.
Thank you.